All right, guys, welcome to Monday game week, and our guys got work in on Thursday, Friday, a little bit Saturday, and then starting back today after Sunday off on Clemson. Our guys are excited for a great matchup. Looks like we'll get the earliest kick of the day, so it should be exciting in terms of all the people across the country that'll be waking up on the West Coast, getting to watch a great game and really a great rivalry, a rivalry that when you look back, I didn't realize how many years consecutively Georgia played Clemson for a long time, but just a lot of respect for their program, what Dabo's done. He's done an incredible job. He's got a great culture there, a great environment. You think about their coaching staff, how intact it's been able to stay, how many coaches he's had going to be head coaches. And they do a tremendous job recruiting our state, and we go head-to-head with them quite a bit. When you look across their roster, there's a lot of kids that we were really close to, and I'm sure it's the same way with him. So should be an awesome environment. I have so much respect for the kickoff classic game. Gary Stoken and his staff, Aflac, is near and dear to my heart, and has done a tremendous job in our state. And for them to take over this cause, I think it's a great event, and to have two teams like this, it's going to be awesome.
Yeah, Coach, when you're studying for an opponent like Clemson, haven't played in several years, what are you looking at? What are you studying? Are you looking at maybe some games from last year? Are you looking at the TV copy from the spring game? What are you studying to identify their identity?
Well, you study the history of the coordinators, and you look at that hard. Dabo has an impact on the offense, so you look at what he's done through his time being there. The most recent you look at is last year's games. And nobody is exactly what they were the year before, but you don't have any other options to study. You don't have game film of this year, and this is the only game that we'll go into without game film of this year, so it all starts to change. But I'm sure everybody across the country is the same way. Do you have a new wrinkle? Do you have a new player that's an impact that you're trying to use in a certain way? What are you going to do different? What are you going to do the same? But at the end of the day, coaches chase all those things, but it boils down to who blocks the best, who tackles the best, who makes the least catastrophic mistakes, and avoiding turnovers and being explosive.
Kirby, to your left, your thoughts on their quarterback, Cade Klubnik, what he's been able to do in running that offense?
Yeah, it seems like he's been there forever, and this is really his third year, but he's a great, really good athlete. He's played a lot of football for a guy that age. Has the ability to scramble, make plays on his feet, has more weapons around him. I think he's a lot more comfortable now in their offense. You could see that throughout the year last year as you watched the season go on, how much more comfortable he got, especially when they started going to Phil a lot more as their feature back, and it became a much more physical team. So, the addition of Matt Luke, who's a tremendous coach, was here with us. I think that makes them even more versatile and some of the things he's going to bring to the table. But Cade's been a great asset for them, and I know he'll be, very experienced.
Kirby, I want to ask you about Matt Luke. Just with your experience with him, what can you expect out of one of his offensive lines, what you guys are going to see on Saturday?
Toughness. He's got an extremely experienced offensive line. I want to say it's almost 100 starts. 3 of the 5 guys have over 25 or something. It's crazy. Very rare in college football to have a person with more than 25 starts, because that means they stayed for at least, they're coming into their third season starting, and they've got a tremendous offensive line in terms of the amount of experience they have starting. I would have thought ours was one of the most experienced offensive lines in the country. Well, theirs has got more starts than ours. So I know Matt will do a tremendous job. They'll play with toughness, effort. I'm sure he'll add some wrinkles to their offense, but he's a really good football coach.
Kirby, will Colbie Young be available, and what kind of work has he been able to get the last few weeks?
Yeah, Colbie's been great. He's ever since the scrimmage, not this Saturday, we didn't scrimmage, the Saturday before that, he's been able to get out there and run and do some things. He practiced ever since we started on Clemson full go, so he's been great. Should be ready to go.
Yeah, Coach, you talked about some familiarity with their roster, particularly defense on the defensive side of the football. Is there something about this state that they identify with on that side of the football, just from a player's perspective? And you mentioned the familiarity. Some of those guys that come in here, I'm sure you camped almost all of those in-state guys. Do you feel like you have a better identity about their roster?
I don't know if I have a better identity, I guess, compared to what? To other teams we play? I mean, you play more teams in your conference, and you see them more in overlap film. So a lot of times you can see defensive players in the SEC multiple times in your breakdown. Clemson, you won't see in your breakdown very often. We do know a lot of their players, but it's offense and defense both in terms of that. There are a lot more, seems like, Georgia flavor to their defense. Some of that may be the area that their coaches on defense recruit. I know they've got a former high school coach of Georgia on their defensive staff, and there's a lot of good defensive players from our state on their defense.
Coach, how do you feel about your running back rotation going into this game? What might it look like?
Yeah, really excited about the backs we've got. The guys have worked really hard. They continue to grow and get better. Rod's toe is still an issue for him. But, I mean, anytime you go into the new season, you're like, what do I have? You don't really know what you have. That's why it's so critical in our spring to go out and play our spring game like it's a game, because it's the first version of your new self. And then you go through the scrimmages, which we've had 2, and you try to figure out the best version of yourself in those scrimmages, because those are preseason games in the NFL terms, and I felt really comfortable with where our backfield is in those games and doing a good job. I mean, at Georgia, we don't say, okay, let's start all over. There's these guys that have been in our program that have been picking up stunts, blitzes that our defense runs. We do 2-spot walkthroughs where they're getting to pick things up. So there's a lot of guys that have had a lot of reps doing those things that hopefully have great games Saturday.
I was going to ask you about Rod Robinson right off the bat. Did he have surgery? And also Warren Brinson's status for Saturday.
Warren looks good. He's practiced every day. We've practiced for Clemson. He's done a good job. He's been out there competing. I mean, he didn't get the luxury of going through camp, which to me is like, camp is what you build your foundation on. So he missed some time in camp, but he also has had 4 camps in his time at Georgia. So it's not like it's his first go-round in terms of that. And, yeah, Rod did have surgery on his toe.
Kirby, as far as Carson goes, I guess I want to ask this question. Since NIL started, locker room chemistry has been something that has to be managed. Can you talk about Carson's relationship with the team? He's obviously had a very high-profile NIL experience, and yet, from all indications, it appears that everything's run smoothly.
Yeah, I think that's each individual person responds differently to how they perceive NIL. So to assume that it's a problem in a locker room is probably not a good assumption, and to assume that it's not is probably not a good assumption. We try to address that early in our team back in January and February when you start brand new, that everybody is in a different position. It's no different. We showed the NFL salary cap. We show the NFL minimum. Then we show the NFL the highest thing you can get at each position, and franchise players. And it's very obvious what quarterbacks make as starting quarterbacks in the NFL. And by no means do I think that we are the NFL, but our kids acknowledge and recognize that the quarterback is a different position when it comes to NIL. And Carson does a good job handling that. It's never been about that with him. He's very humble. He works hard. He's a leader. And the players respect what Carson went through to get where he is, and I think he earned that.
Yeah, Coach, you mentioned sometimes that you don't really know what you have till you get on the field. With Carson, what do you feel like the comfortability factor is with him, having gone through everything he went through last year, now having the belief in his teammates that he's gone out and faced some live bullets?
Yeah, I was pretty comfortable with Carson last year, to be honest with you, because he's seen a bunch of live bullets in practices. When you've got a guy that's been in your program as long as he has and done as many drills and pickups and blitzes and third downs, and I mean, the guy, that was not my biggest concern last year, and it wouldn't be my biggest concern this year in terms of his ability to execute to understand what defenses are trying to do. He's seen most of it. It's more about can he elevate the people around him's game? Can he make them better? And that's one of the things he's been working on.
Hey, Kirby, and one more about Carson. Just the luxury of having somebody. I mean, it's going to be very unusual going forward in today's college game to have a guy who's been around that long. And also just where has he, if you've seen some progression in him, I mean, he had a great year last year, obviously, and so much experience, but have you seen him kind of take it even a little higher for going into his final year?
Yeah, he's very comfortable in the offense. I think, Coach Bobo, Coach Hartley, all the guys on offense that make decisions, they know they can probably put a little more on his plate in terms of volume, but you're always limited by the other people around you, and I think that's key in the first game is that we're not overloading their plate to appease Carson and being smart about how much you game plan and how much you put in versus what do you do well and what do you do all year round well.
Kirby, you mentioned some of the top running backs. It's game week now. I wonder if you can tell us if Trevor Etienne will be available and how you feel about Branson Robinson and the 3 freshman backs.
Yeah, I'm excited about all those guys. I don't really talk about any of the other stuff in regards to any of our players with suspensions, but I'm excited about all the guys that are going to get an opportunity to play it back.
When we saw you at SEC Media Days, you talked about needing depth, long season, a lot of injuries, etc. Do you feel you have that right now since then? Or is it just over the course of the season some guys will step up, or as a head coach, does one never feel you have enough depth throughout the year?
The latter.
With Roderick, is there any kind of time frame for when he'll be able to come back?
Not real sure. Probably be week to week. Not sure how long it'll take in terms of the surgery.
Yeah, regarding suspensions, I know you guys are going to handle that internally. Have those decisions at least been made internally on whether or not they will be available for Saturday's game?
Like I said, we don't discuss those. Thank you.
Coach, Clemson's a team that doesn't typically add a lot of pieces in the transfer portal. Like, what's the impact of that as you get ready to scout for a week 1 opponent compared to some of these other schools that might add a lot of pieces in the offseason?
Yeah, I think that's much ado about nothing. I mean, you have who you have, right? So in the spring, you have, I'm going to guess, 95% of your roster. You might pick up some after that. But I think everybody makes a big deal about that. I mean, I'm like Dabo. If I could keep my entire roster, I'd be all for keeping my roster, because I believe in the kids we sign. I believe in the kids we recruit, and I want to grow them to get better. It's not realistic to think that you're going to keep all your players right now. I mean, what is realistic is that you need to be operating with as much depth as possible, and it's made it tougher to do that. But as far as evaluating the opposing team, whether they have kids or don't have kids, one thing you know is they're going to know their system because they've been in it. They're not new to it. They're ingrained in it. They know their culture. They know who they are. They know how they play. They know what their standard is, and that to me is. You can be envious of that, the fact that they have the guys that have been in their program are in their program.
Yeah, with Mykel, just what have been the biggest challenges he's had to overcome, just moving to a little bit of a new position? How have you seen him attack that, especially going all through fall camp?
Yeah, I don't know where that's coming from. Like, he's not really at a new position. Like, all the things he did last year, he's done this year. So he works last year at outside linebacker in individual period, and he worked with the defensive line. So those two are like a mirror. They almost share the same responsibilities. So he's done the same thing this year that he did last year. I think that's more of a souped up answer that he's like playing a different position. He's not really playing a different position. He's got the versatility to be able to go out and be an outside linebacker because he's really a good athlete. Like, he can cover and play people, but one of his best qualities and most rewarding quality is rush, and we want him to be able to rush.
Kirby, you're obviously no stranger to Mercedes-Benz Stadium. Your team was there last December. Is it fair to say that's an advantage, just having been in the building? I remember talking to Stetson. You mentioned location of play clock and some other things they're familiar with. And I guess when you go back there, how fresh does it seem, or does it seem like a familiar place for you?
Yeah, hard to say. I mean, that's about 5 minutes worth of value. Once the game kicks off, nobody's thinking about where they are. They're thinking about the person they're playing against.
Coach, you mentioned Clemson's offensive line, the experience they have. Their defensive front, too, has a lot of experience and very good as well. Just kind of what you see from those and the challenge they're going to pose for your offensive line.
Yeah, you look at it on paper and people say, well, they only have a certain number of defensive starters, but two of the best players and most statistically best players they had last year are back, and they were freshmen who technically didn't start. But those guys were dominant players. Parker and Peter Woods both were really good players. And, we knew those guys in recruiting, and they're tremendous athletes and both very productive with other guys coming back. They've got experienced guys coming back. So when you look across the defensive front, Clemson is never going to be short there. They have twitchy, fast, hard-playing guys. The linebacker crew is extremely instinctive and well coached. You can see they carry over from when Brent left. They don't miss things in terms of keys and recognition, and they play really hard on defense.
Yeah, Coach, going to ask about another defensive player, obviously familiarity with Barrett Carter. What do you remember about his recruitment process, and what kind of player has he developed into over the last, several years?
First of all, he's a tremendous kid. I mean, he's one of the high academic, went to the great high school right there at North Gwinnett. Just a fun kid to recruit because he had a great personality. He enjoyed recruiting. He was upfront and honest. He didn't get too enamored in the process. He handled it the right way and made the choice that he thought was best for him. And he's become a really good player, a dominant player. And you can see on tape his instincts, his athleticism. I mean, he's a playmaker, and they got a good one in Barrett.
Coach, with Branson Robinson, what has this past year revealed to you about his character working back to be available week 1?
Well, it's been a process. I mean, the kid was down in the dumps because he was having a great camp last year, and the injury happened, and he wasn't with the rest of the team for a lot of the time. He had to break away, go about things a different way. He spent a lot of time in the training room. That is a grueling injury to go through and work all the way back to the point where he didn't get to go through all of spring. He did a lot of things in spring, but he didn't get to go through that in spring. So this fall camp's been big for him in terms of confidence. He's gained confidence through special teams. He's gained confidence through reps. But he had a good body of work before. So it wasn't like he didn't have that entire freshman year where he took a lot of reps that 2022 season.
Time for one more question.
Kirby, Clemson brings back their lead rusher, Phil Mafah. Just what stands out to you about him and really their run game in general?
Yeah, physicality. He's got a downhill way about him. He's one of those guys that he was that way in high school. I mean, the more carries he gets, the harder he is to tackle. I think he enjoys it more the more he gets it. And, they hung their hat on him and towards late season, and he was really physical, really good runner. And I think with that offensive line tying